Okay, thank you very much. And welcome everyone to our biweekly news update with Paul and the Tea and Scones Nightcap. And so just go straight into it. Ellis, could you please open with the invocation, please?
All beings, life forms, thought forms, entities, assemblages, technologies, beingnesses, awarenesses, and all else that exists that do not have our highest interest and or the highest interest of all life everywhere, and are not in the highest service to the one true and only living God of all creation I am, in thought, form, mind, action, deed, word, and in all ways, and all artificial intelligences and artificial life forms and the technologies they use, smart dust, nanodust, black goo, graphenes, algorithms, operating systems, thought forms, and all other artificial life, and all else that is not created by the one true living God I am, we demand all to leave our minds, spirits, bodies, souls, and all that we are in all dimensions, densities, levels, and locations now and forever and never return. All permission to create or maintain attachments, influence from within or without in any way, to cohabitate or possess in part or in whole, to affect or defect in any way, to feed off our energies, our minds, spirits, bodies, or souls, or anything that we are on any dimension, density, level, or location, or alter or change our thoughts, feelings, our mental, physical, emotional, or genetic structure in any way, or create any pain, discomfort, or put us into disharmony with the only God of all creation I am, is permanently and forever removed. All contracts, obligations, and agreements we have made that are not in our highest interest and or not in the highest interest of all life everywhere, and not in the highest service to the one true living God of all creation I am, we now declare null and void. All emptiness, holes, vacancies, rips, tears, or injuries from the invocation, contract, negation, and removal of artificial intelligences are now to be filled with the divine light of the Holy Spirit, the word of the one true living God I am, and the healing and compassion of his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. All protections in all of this invocation are asked for in the name and authority of the one true living God of all compassion, love, light, and creation I am, and his Holy Son, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. As it is said, now it is done, and is sealed now and for all time, tetelestai.
Thank you, Ellis. Sophie, could you start us with prayer, please?
Father, Mother God, oh eternal being, thank you so much for your presence with us here tonight as Paul and Jean discuss all of the activities of the past couple of weeks. And I ask that you guide them to speak about the truth, all of the truth that you want to be revealed to the world, and to bring about the understanding of everything that's going on, to understand it like at a deeper level than just maybe what things might look like. For we know that not everything is as it seems. I ask for your blessings and protection for President Trump, and also for the alliance and all of the warriors that are fighting this fight in your name, Father God. And also, uh, I ask for blessings and protection on everyone that is here tonight. Also, Father God, we lift up all of the children that are still being held captive, and we pray for their rescue, their safety, and their freedom, and that they be returned to a loving, nurturing, and peaceful lives. Thank you for holding us in your hands as we move through this storm of this great awakening. Thank you for filling us with the Holy Spirit. And most of all, Father God, we thank you for sending us your beloved Son, Jesus the Christ of God, our Redeemer, the way, the truth, and the life, showing us the way out of this fallen world and back to you. We pray in the name of Jesus the Christ of God. Teteleste.
Thank you so much, Sophie, for that beautiful prayer, and Ellis for the invocation. And welcome to our biweekly news update of Tea and Scones Nightcap. with me and Paul of the Insider Club, Charlie Ward, and greetings to the deep divers. And so over to you, Paul. How's it going? What would you like to start off with?
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me on. It's wonderful to be here again, talking about what is going on in the world, because now is a more exciting time than ever. We are seeing the things that President Trump said he's going to do actually happen. And no more so, we've got to cover it, haven't we, Gene? We've got to talk about the Epstein document release, haven't we?
Absolutely. And in regards to that, we're pretty much most of us already know about the flight logs. But what we're talking about really is the actual videos and other evidence from the island itself that'll show people doing things there to young, underage people that is quite horrific and evil, and literally video proof of who's doing what. So it is something that's going to shake the world, I do believe, as that comes out. And so they're going through, Pam Bondi and the others, Cash Patel and that, in which sequence to release things. Back to you, Paul.
Brilliant. I'm going to share a cover letter that came with the documents that were released yesterday. Now, I believe from what I've been digging over the last few hours, what was released is what we already know. The things that were already out there on the internet. What I believe she's now gone and done is made a big PR stunt of this because she needs to crack the nut that is the FBI, to get into those offices and get all the real documentation, the videos, and everything else that goes with it. So in this letter, she's written to Director Cash Patel, basically saying, instruct the FBI to hand it all over. Unredacted, undestroyed, unmissing, you name it, I want everything. Because she cannot just walk in there and take what she wants. She's got to go through due process, as they call it. So this letter, I believe, is telling us what is really going on, which is we want the real stuff now. They may already have it via other means, but obviously for the masses to wake up and understand this, it's got to be done through the due process that they know and aware of. So that's my understanding from the document release in the last 24 hours, that it's actually a massive PR stunt because they want to put the FBI in the picture.
Yes, and I want to remind people that even before Trump was in, he was doing things like what happened with the situation in the Gaza and Netanyahu. And so people are upset with Pam Bondi saying it's giving them time to destroy the evidence. They already have the evidence. You don't have 200 executive orders ready to go. And I'll cover this in an expose of an item by the Duran, and go into that in deeper where they explain this. But you don't have all that ready to go without a team that's on this before any announcements go out in public. And the amazing things that goes into about no leaks and those kind of things. Back to you, Paul.
Brilliant. Well, I've got quite a few other stories, Gene, but I understand you've got quite a bit to go into yourself. Can we touch on these?
Absolutely. I've got a lot of things lined up. So first, I want
Okay.
to just start off with the Ukraine. And from the Q&A I had yesterday on Deep Dives, I wanted to go into two items that I'll do exposés on. People ask me, what platforms, what are you talking about? So I'll do exposés on those two items. But before that, just as a explanation of what happened, as we go into those exposés, to give you a background about the Russian annexation of Donetsk, Kherson, Luhansk, and Zaporozhye Oblasts. So this item here, you can see this is right off Wikipedia, and you can read through that, but it outlines the basics of where we went from and where we came to. And of course, also goes into Crimea because they're saying they want that back. So that's just a little item for everybody there. I wanted to give that reminder. So people were asking me about Barzikimon. This person is ahead of it all the time and is right 100% of the time so far. So I'm going to click through this a bit and go into it. I started where I thought it'd be interesting, and he doesn't talk right away, so I started it in a little bit. You get to see some pretty cool technologies and different things. He's sharing stuff of Russian technologies and all kinds of things. So I think this guy must actually be in the Russian military or something, or a newscaster, Russian newscaster, to get this kind of item. So this first part here, we're going to go into for about just a little under 2 minutes here.
The Russian army's numerous victories on the battlefield and its control of vast territories have placed Ukraine and the entire West at a significant disadvantaged position in the forthcoming peace talks with Moscow. By the way, if we look back at history, we can see that Russia has always been in a dominant and very advantageous.
So I want people to pay attention. This is how Russia always has worked, and people don't understand it. This will give you a deep understanding into how Russia has always worked in conflict.
Disposition during all the negotiations. The fact is that this is Moscow's favorite tactic. Russians understand that any conflicts and wars inevitably lead to negotiations. That's why they aim to dominate the battlefield by gaining control of as many territories as possible. All this allows them to be in the status of winner during the negotiation process and dictate their terms when signing any peace agreements. The same thing happened during World War II, when Russia and the United States decided the fate of Europe and the entire post-war world. Back then, thanks to the major successes of the Soviet army on the battlefield, Joseph Stalin noticeably dominated his opponents during the Yalta Conference and at the negotiations in Tehran. As a result, the West had to agree to all the conditions set by Joseph Stalin. In the 21st century, Russia used the same tactics during the war in Georgia in 2008 and during the Syrian conflict in 2016. As a result, the West once again had to make serious concessions during the negotiation process with Moscow. And now in 2025, everything that happens on the battlefield in Ukraine indicates that history will repeat itself again. And at the upcoming peace talks, the West will once again have to agree and accept all of Russia's conditions.
So that's the first part. I wanted to, the very first part of this expose, to explain how Russia does conflict and what they get out of it and how they get out of it. We all hear Trump saying many different things, still saying, about it could go on a little bit more and the minerals deal and all of this. And that's his art of the deal. However, Russia, you're not going to budge them. They have done this since World War II, and even before that. This is their way. It works extremely well every single time. Over to you, Paul.
I couldn't agree more, Gene. Also, Russia is very old school. They've never moved on from a wartime society almost. And it's a strange way to describe that. They've always kept a decent sized military. They've always kept production. They've always kept natural resources as a steadfast, because I think in their eyes, they never know when they will go to war. But then you flip over to the West, where we have got fat, we've got lazy, we've got rid of all our production, we don't even mine our own resources anymore. Our defense spending has fallen to, I think most countries are like 1, maybe 2% at best of GDP. Russia spends a lot, 5%. Now, I've been talking to somebody who has lived in Russia, has got partners in Russia who was... Anyway, long story short, their production can be flipped from a non-wartime to a wartime military production within 6 months. And they are at full steam ahead producing tanks, guns, bombs, you name it. Look at the West right now. We can't even supply Ukraine with enough guns. That tells you that well, you just look at the corruption in the West and it tells you everything. Because if we stayed to the old ways, Right now, Russia would not have pushed as far as it has done in Ukraine. All right, it's pushing for the right reasons, but it's just telling you, Trump's trying to squeeze Europe into increasing their spending on military defense to 2.5%. Really, it should be 5%, but they can't afford it because all the fat, corrupt, globalist, cabal people that you can name have had their hand in the cookie jar for so long, they've made their countries weak. And now we are seeing the repercussions of that.
Yes, and I've been talking about that exact same thing for a while, where the West, due to just one individual, taught about just now marketing. And they brought that idea to Japan at the end of World War II so they could have a higher profit margin without having the huge warehouse space in the factories, large factories that aren't being completely used. So in just now marketing, you don't have the capacity to suddenly expand. You're at the mercy of what you already have. Russia has never done that. They have lots of factory space. They can continue to expand quickly and do exactly what you said, Paul. Not only that, they have the warehouse and all of this, plus the people in Russia never got soft. At the end of the fall of Soviet Union and all of that, they were pretty broken down. And so Putin really strengthened the country, and people work extremely hard. They're not so much on the dole like they are in the West. And so through all of this, it's been a learning lesson now for the Western world. So I'm going to go back to the item here and just listen to about 30 seconds here. I've got it set up again, and then we can continue to do a little more talk on this.
After the capture of the settlement of Novinkoy by Russian troops and the advance towards Basavka, the Ukrainian command lost the opportunity to freely use the main route to supply the Ukrainian grouping in the city of Sudza. Against this backdrop, reports began to appear that the Ukrainian army units were preparing to retreat from the Kursk region. Some Russian war correspondents also confirmed this information. According to them, signs of the impending retreat of the Ukrainian troops really began to appear in the Kursk region.
So that is actually now bearing fruit, and there are a few thousand have left. There's about 8,000 of the 10,000 when this evacuation started. The Russians purposely left an opening for them to get their people out of there to some degree, because it's a pretty much done. And as you'll see in this expose of this item by Brzikman, it will become obvious where this is all at. Over to you, Paul.
I couldn't agree more, Gene. And as those of you who don't know, Kursk is the region that Ukraine took from Russia. It's the only piece that Ukraine's managed to take from Russia. Now, Russia, one thing we know, they are fantastic at creating what they call cauldrons, which is just a massive meat grinder. They create a circular area that they totally encompass, leaving one small area for troops to pile into, and then they just hammer them with artillery. Kursk has lost tens of thousands of troops because Zelensky just wanted to say he's invaded Russia. And it's just been a massive meat grinder. It's now collapsing, as Gene rightly said. They are pulling out in their droves. They are going to lose it in no time at all. And once that is gone, I think that will be the back broken of Ukraine. Everywhere else in Ukraine, their forces are retreating. They've run out of money. They've run out of manpower. They've run out of weapons. They shouldn't have sold maybe over half the weapons to the rest of the world via the black market. Turns out, yes, Ukraine has been a massive money laundering project. But looking at the overall picture, Russia is in the massively dominant position. The race is on now for peace, because the longer this war goes on, the more Russia is taking. And the likes of BlackRock, the West, Europe, France, UK, even the US, their, shall I say, investment? I don't know, that's probably the wrong word to use in Ukraine. Their investment is diminishing as we speak. So, yeah, Russia is absolutely dominating at the moment, and they are fighting the war the right way, dare I say it. They're not going for scorched earth. They're not destroying everything. I would like to point out as well, Ukraine, via the Biden administration, are landmining huge swathes of the country just to slow Russia down. These landmines will kill women and children for decades to come. Princess Diana, God rest her soul, tried to show as much exposure on this possible. Biden wants to put weapons, or did put weapons, that will kill civilians for years to come. That tells you everything about his administration. He is a warmonger, and landmines I could not be more against. Sorry, I diversified there onto something else.
Yeah, so yeah, the sale of the weapons with, played a little bit about Tucker Carlson saying that, and it was a stupid move. And but even without that, they have no people left. And this will be further explained in this expose. So on we go.
Kiev have once again begun to report a deterioration of emotional and psychological condition of the head of the Kiev regime, Volodymyr Zelensky. It is reported that on February 24th, Zelensky had another nervous breakdown. It is noteworthy that the condition of the illegitimate Ukrainian president worsened immediately after the European leaders held a summit in Kiev. It seemed.
So you can see them all here as van der Leyen and all the group around there, and this will go into this more. It shows how our media doesn't really give us anything. Except for this platform, I never even heard that Zelensky had a nervous breakdown. This is the second one.
This political clown no longer believes in the promises of his European masters. It seems that this dead man walking has really begun to realize that his days are numbered. Moreover, former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is still in Kiev. As it turned out, Boris Johnson is in Kiev to convince Zelensky not to sign an agreement with Washington on the transfer of mineral resources to the United States, in return for repayment of a multi-billion-dollar debt. According to Boris Johnson, the United States, led by Donald Trump, is an unreliable partner, as the current owner of the White House has obvious pro-Russian views. Boris Johnson also urged Zelensky not to repay the debt to the United States. The former British Prime Minister claims that Trump's proposed rare minerals deal with the United States is a real scam, designed to completely destroy Ukraine. My dear truth seekers, let me remind you that in March 2022, during the peace talks in Istanbul between Ukraine and Russia, Boris Johnson also gave similar advice to Zelensky. Boris Johnson was even able to convince the Kiev authorities to abandon the agreements reached in Istanbul. As a result, Ukraine lost Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions. In addition, the Ukrainian army lost more than 1 million soldiers, while the country itself, as a result of constant massive missile strikes, was actually sent to the Stone Age.
So you can see what I'm talking about and I covered this last night in the Q&A, that he no longer Boris Johnson undermined a lot of things, your premier, before. You go through them quite rapidly, but he's trying to undermine the peace deal. He's trying to undermine everything. He caused the death of 1 million soldiers on the Ukrainian side, hundreds of thousands on the Russian side, loss of those 4 territories. The mineral deal, most of those minerals are in those 4 areas just stated in this expose. So, I mean, it's like, what minerals are you talking about? So, and then, of course, it's more about infrastructure and other things that Trump's wanting. This very thin deal that was signed today. That is a few pages. I mean, contracts for hiring people are much more thorough than this thing. And it just, the port of Odessa and a few other items, and oil, which is far more valuable. If you go into it, rare earth minerals, worldwide is about a $15 billion a year industry. That's not a lot. But oil, of course, we all know that it's in the trillions. Over to you, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's starting to become apparent is Boris Johnson seems to be Zelensky's handler with whatever deep state cabal links that there is. As you said, Gene, and as we all know, He told Zelensky to keep the war going right the way at the beginning when there was a peace deal on the table. He's now trying to derail it again. Is Boris Johnson hoping that with enough hoo-ha and fiasco that the deal will collapse? What we do know is Zelensky is on thin ice. If he holds elections, he's out. If this war stops, he's out. If he's out, he's got no protection left. I can guarantee you any deals he is making right now is about keeping his head from a noose, because he's got a lot of people killed when peace could have been achieved right at the very beginning. And now he's looking for anybody to save his skin. And he's going through the USA. And on the back end of that as well, you've now got UK, France, all wanting a piece of the Ukrainian pie. So the minerals are being sold. I don't know why Boris is there. Boris seems to still have a lot of say and influence, even though he's no longer prime minister. Something fishy is there. He's got direct access to Kiev. Why? He's no longer prime minister.
Yes, he's obviously a high-level deep state puppet. That's a neocon globalist. That's for darn sure. So we'll finish out this little expose of this video.
Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron, during an interview with American journalists from Fox News, said that he fully supported the algorithm proposed by Donald Trump to achieve a peaceful settlement of the conflict. In particular, he said that a ceasefire would be declared in Ukraine. And during this temporary truce, presidential elections will be held in Ukraine in order to prepare the ground for the signing of a peace treaty that will include security guarantees for the fighting parties. Macron also added that in order to ensure Ukraine's security, a peacekeeping contingent consisting exclusively of military units from European countries should be deployed in this country. Russia's reaction to these statements by the French president was not long in coming. In particular, the ambassador at large of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Rodion Myrishnik, said that Russia would never agree even to a temporary ceasefire.
And I want to remind you what this expose stated about Russia and their position. So continuing.
According to him, the fighting in Ukraine will stop only when Russia is confident that all Moscow's demands have been met, and Ukraine no longer poses a threat not only to Russia, but also to other neighboring states. Moreover, the Russian diplomat also noted that soldiers from Western countries will never be allowed into Ukraine. At the same time, he admitted that Europe would most likely be allowed to participate in the negotiation process, but at the same time, European countries would be deprived of the right to make important decisions and tell Russia what to do. Thus, Russia has once again made it clear that the West will have to come to terms with the fact that the current conflict will end only on Moscow's terms.
So over to you, Paul.
Yeah, see, now the peace process is an interesting one. Now, you've got to look, we've got Russia and the US, which are primarily leading it. They've let Zelensky in just because they just don't want any headaches with him. The European countries, I don't think, have got past the fact peace is coming. They are adamant they want war still, and they are under some false assumption that Ukraine's going to get into NATO afterwards once Ukraine wins. Well, straight away we can see Ukraine is not winning this in any way, shape or form. Now, Europe is really displeased with France and the UK going straight to Trump, breaking ranks, going, we'll help you get all the resources out. Let us have a go. Going on to the troops in Ukraine, from my last bit of information from our source inside of Russia, no way, under no circumstances, they are letting any European US troops into Ukraine. They're not needed. Ukraine has an army. They can police themselves. This point that the UK and France are trying to push is a moot point. They're not going in. Russia will not have it, because once the troops are there, then the encroachment starts all over again, and Russia will not have it. Full stop. And that is something that People talk about it. It's not happening. Maybe private security contractors might go in there to keep the peace, but I think that's the best they're going to hope for. Worst case, Russia might even send in their own troops to keep the peace. Who knows? But right now, no way are peacekeeping troops going to be allowed in.
Yeah, like you're saying, the Russians will not allow European or Western peacekeeping forces in there, even though Starmer, your current prime minister, is wanting to put boots on the ground for peacekeeping, like Macron said, or something else, and want to use the U.S. as a backstop. And Trump's playing it back and forth, making the globalists think that he's being swayed by this baloney, but he's not remotely being swayed. And he's talking to Putin regularly now. So that's not going to happen at all. So back to you, Paul.
Yeah. And something as well, which we're seeing, you've got Macron and Starmer sitting in the White House with Trump doing interviews. And there's something weird I've noticed. They like to touch Trump, almost like some sort of deity, which I find very weird. When they talk, all of a sudden you'll see Macron lean over and touch his arm. Starmer's done the same. There's something very strange going on there, almost like they're being brought to heel. And you can see, I believe we're going to see Europe collapse in the next few years because they've got no production, no natural resources. They've just lost Ukraine, which was probably their last ditch attempt. France has lost Africa for natural resources. So, yeah, Europe's going to collapse, and we're going to see. I honestly believe we're going to see three superpowers in the world coming up. We're going to see China, Russia, and the US, and all the smaller countries, maybe Africa if they can get their act together, taking it to four. But we're going to see all the other smaller countries gradually get swallowed up into these big three superpowers.
Yeah, I agree with you that that's the spheres of influence that the next expose goes into that I wanted to cover. And of course, the current situation of the EU and NATO itself is pretty much done. It's a done deal. It's been burned out by the Ukraine operation, and it is pretty much made it come to an end. For Germany, with the pipeline being blown up by the U.S. and all these other things. So I'll go ahead and go into the next expose. As I said, the Iran, and this is Alexander Makaris, Alex Ristofro, and they're interviewing with a constitutional lawyer who's quite brilliant. He's been on a few platforms and is really knows what he's talking about. This is, as you can see, Robert Barnes. So we'll go ahead and get started here with this expose.
And the original conservative theory was behind consolidating power in the executive branch, but it got other sort of independent, populist inclined legal minds to concur because it's the only elected head of the executive. That the only chance the American people have to impact our executive branch is through the election of the president. They can have some impact in terms of the Senate, in terms of confirmation and things like that. But for the most part, the only way they impact executive branch policy and prerogative is through the election of the president. So if you want to respect the vote, you want that president to have as much power as possible. You want the only person that's elected to be the one with the power, not people that are unelected.
So over to you, Paul.
Yeah, elections. That's a subject in itself, isn't it, Gene? We've seen they can be influenced. We've seen that, how do I describe it? That we believe we have a say sometimes when we really don't. But going back to the last election, we actually had a say. The US people had a say, and the whole coin has been flipped on the cabal, the deep state. And I'm very excited to say that we are seeing good in this world, because I don't know about everybody else. Last year, I felt quite down. Don't get me wrong, I believed the good was coming, but to see so much horrible happening in the world was phenomenal. It took a toll on your soul. But I'm in this year now, 2025. Trump's in. Trump's team is in. Look at everything they're doing. We're 2 months into the year, and they have literally flipped the cabal's table upside down. All their pieces are falling to the ground. To me, it looks like Europe is the last hiding place for the cabal, globalists, whichever way you want to call them. And that is even collapsing as well. I'm very excited about this year. Things are changing. I pray, and I know Trump is going to put things in position now where the globalists can never take control and power ever again. And we will be moving into a golden age very soon. I can see it already. I don't know about everybody else putting the puzzle pieces together, but I can see it.
Yeah, so on that, this expose will explain by the Duran pretty much everywhere Trump's going and how we got to where we are. He's going to explain, Robert Barnes and Alexander McCarris are going to explain this to all of us. It's a very well done video, and it explains what I call the Q Alliance as well. People didn't believe in it. This may change your mind.
What has become the adversary of effective government, I would say domestically and globally, has been this administrative bureaucratic state that has developed in the post-World War II era. That, you know, to take Peter Dale Scott's reference in the late 1960s, when you take this deeply entrenched bureaucratic unelected administrative state and you give it the power of the Pentagon, the power of intelligence gathering, the power of State Department diplomacies, the power of economic sanctions, the power of law enforcement, the power of the national security state, you create a deep state. It was a dual state, which is an old English doctrine originated by a editor at the Economist, which was, you know, how could you have this state continue to function independent of the will of the people? Well, you have a dual state, an administrative bureaucracy that's emerged parallel to the elected members of government. But when you give them national security power, it creates a deep state, and that, you know, communicates the corruption that's involved in it, its entrenched influence, which is involved in it, et cetera. And so it's a term that originated on the left, popularized on the right in the Trump era, thanks to Steve Bannon and others who come from sort of a more populist mindset or perspective. But it was basically co-opting the country, to where it didn't matter who you elected to the president, the same foreign policy continued, and certain aspects of domestic policy continued unabated. No change. Didn't matter. I mean, when you go back and look, since World War II, other than a brief little period of time with John Kennedy and a part of Jimmy Carter's administration, you basically see no difference, no matter who's the policy. You wouldn't know who's president by our foreign policy. You wouldn't know who's president if there's anybody different by our domestic policy as it related to that foreign policy.
So what he's going to go into here is, you know, he's explained to you the differences that the Constitution of the United States makes. And he's going to go into empire and what empire usually does. And you can see it with Rome, which I'll go, that the Roman Empire, as it got a deep state of its own, it came to where it eroded the country itself from within. And so I'll go into that in the next piece. But it's talking about, like you mentioned, Paul, the elector ability and the will of the people. Over to you, Paul.
Yeah, one thing we have seen is unelected officials actually calling the shots. You can see across the board, you can see it everywhere. Look at the global military industrial complex, how much they have rubbed their hands together over the war in Ukraine. They had a massive outlet to sell their weapons to everybody who's been desperate to buy them. And they've done it. We've got also food. We've got medicine, vaccines. All of these unelected groups of people, NGOs, have managed to have influence over elections, over presidents, over governments. And this is something massive that has to stop, because they are not benefiting the world. They are destroying it piece by piece with their own greed. And one thing we know about greed, it knows no bounds. Once they start, and if they think they can steal, they will steal more and more and more until eventually the system breaks. It's like these big corporate entities that go into businesses that are profitable, steal everything, and then the business goes bust 6 months, a year, 2 years later. This is exactly the same but they are using people to do this. They are using our tax money to do this. And someone told me about 3 weeks ago, every country is for sale. How much do you want to spend? And this is where the global corporate entities band together, put their money into a pot and buy a country. That's the truth. This goes back to our straw man, what each person is worth. They buy countries and do what they want with them. That is terrifying. It moved away from the people electing officials to corporate conglomerates, deep states, cabals, whatever you want to call it, to buying countries to do what they want with them.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. So, and they talk about that in this expose about color regimes and it's a business. So let's go on and listen to a little bit more here.
The other thing that I think has been sort of somewhat unique about the deep state imperial ambitions is that most empires are supposed to enrich the domestic population, not impoverish the domestic population. But the American empire, you could even say sort of the Anglo-American empire, because of its origins, its ties to the Brits and certain parts of Europe, Atlanticist Europe, so to such a degree that they're called the Atlanticists in certain intellectual circles, these neocon, neoliberal alignment, is that they don't serve their domestic populations. They serve their own sort of globalist agendas, independent and separate of, in fact, usually they extract rather than contribute to the domestic populations. Like a lot of the US aid scandal, you can go back and read books like Lords of Poverty, talking about how this is sort of operational in the NGO world. That there's a reason why governments complain about NGOs, not because that they hate humanitarian aid. That humanitarian aid ain't what they're up to. Everything was authored by Graham Hancock, who's now busy, fighting the lost civilization.
So, I was speaking about the Roman Empire before and how it fell due to the situation of the erosion from within. And it just, we could see this ongoing manipulation and control that they do. So let's continue with this expose if I can get it close here. I had it close. That's about as close as I'm going to get, I think.
What Trump figured out in his first term was that that the American government wasn't run by anybody that was elected. The American government was run by an entirely unelected cadre of people. He tried to maneuver within that group, but they effectively derailed his most significant foreign policy objectives by Russiagate, then Ukrainegate that led to impeachment, then the COVID pandemic. They did three things and how that COVID pandemic was handled, what was allowed to be talked about, what was not allowed to be talked about, so on and so forth. That having him defer to people like Fauci, which enrages him to this day now, is that they were able to effectively derail his first presidential term, and I think they thought that they could use lawfare to derail any chance at a second term. That ultimately failed, and they appreciated how ready he was to go at the heart of the deep state of multiple approaches. And he's come at them at so many different levels at the same time that their head is spinning and they were unprepared. The way in which he was able, as you guys have done in great detail, the completely circumvent the entire European establishment and the domestic neoliberal establishments on the topic of the Russia. And that he was doing this broad scale, that he was going to use the Ukraine conflict as a way to normalize relations with Russia entirely, not just solve the Ukraine problem, but go back to kickstarting what he wanted to be the case, which has now been made much more difficult to achieve because of what happened in the last 8 years, particularly the Biden 4 years. Getting anybody to trust the U.S. again is going to be treacherous on its own terms.
So it's like you're saying, what it does when you're in that mode is it erodes the confidence of other leaders and other countries on your financials and everything else about you. But at the very same time, this is what caused the rise of BRICS, is this weaponization of the US dollar and the SWIFT system and all of this. But it also leads to a eroding of the country within. And in the process of that, it goes in and creates more situations, which we'll just continue and listen to about that.
Because Trump has his own view of the dollar. I have my own perspective on the dollar. But however you look at it, the whole world saw that the U.S. government could weaponize the dollar itself, weaponize SWIFT itself, weaponize the financial system itself, weaponize the mechanism of trade itself in such a way that they have no incentive to trust the United States again. And so Trump's got to rebuild those bridges. And he's managed to start the process of doing so while keeping all of the people who would love to sabotage that completely in the dark. I mean, they didn't realize what was going to happen when Hegseth came over and talked and said, maybe ultimately we're out of NATO altogether. When J.D. Vance came in and said the problem in the world isn't Russia or China, the problem in the world is the European elites, is the European leadership, is the European cadre, which they're still shaking in their boots about and enraged about. Even John Majors coming out of his wheelchair to write little pieces. I thought he was dead like Poppy Bush. While at the same time he went after their money, which was where U.S. aid is the central base, and then now he's after NED. He's going.
That's National Endowment for Democracy, and so what he's talking about here is that how Trump just hit him so fast over and over in every single way possible at the same time, and Alexander Macaris is going to comment on that. It's a art of war is you hit your enemy in every single direction, like we now see, like you mentioned earlier, Paul, about what's going on in Ukraine. So on we go.
Let's check. And as pointed out in the cabinet now, the entire deep state has to deal with both Robert Kennedy coming in the side of dealing with a range of topics and other things that Robert Kennedy's involved with beyond health and human services. Part of the cabinet that Trump is incorporating in the disclosure of confidential, the classified files concerning the Kennedy assassination, the Robert Kennedy assassination, the Martin Luther King assassination. Other Russiagate files are probably coming down the pipeline as well. Epstein files, Diddy files after that. All kinds of interesting intel and information buried in those groups, given who those people were involved with and complicit for. And then Tulsi Gabbard ODNI.
So he now has his entire cabinet in position, and all of these things are being exposed at the same time. So he's going to now go into what Trump's objectives are, and we'll play a little bit of that, and then we'll stop for some comments here.
Coordinating all intelligence over all intelligence agencies who have been her principal adversary for the last decade. And so and then while at the same time keeping the spigots flowing because the money's getting cut off, and trying to prevent transparency by Elon Musk running around with Doge. Started off as a meme coin and became an actual government agency to unsettle. You could have scripted this. This was like a 14-year-old version of the simulation. You know what I mean? So what's going to happen is this billionaire dude that likes to send rockets to space and wants to colonize Mars is going to use a meme coin to defund the deep state apparatus. I mean, you wouldn't have believed it 2 years ago. And it's all going to be run by a reality TV star who's been like the president of the United States after being indicted, impeached, investigated, and attempted bankruptcy. It's just wild. And I understand certain perspectives on the left that are skeptical of Trump and so forth. But I think the proof is going to be in the pudding. I mean, you're already seeing it. What's happening with Russia is probably his first great foreign policy success, maybe of his entire tenure to a certain degree, going back to his first term, will be if he can pull this off. If he can completely end the war in Ukraine, get out without any risk of continuous conflict, such as NATO being in Ukraine, for example, and by trying to rebuild bridges with Russia, which I think will be as hard as anything else. It's being understated. All the West, the pro-war people are all chanting at the bit that Hegseth and Trump are giving things away. Trump has wanted to make clear those things are never going to be on the table anyway. He wants to normalize relations, not use increasing threats to try to get something that's not going to get there anyway. I mean, he understands Putin and Russia well enough to understand that's a loser strategy. It's always been a loser strategy. The loser strategy for Biden, it was a loser strategy for Obama, it was a loser strategy for Bush. It's been a loser strategy for a while.
So this is, talking about this loser strategy and the winning strategy. I don't think the deep state figured that Trump would be using the Ukraine conflict to renormalize our relationship across the board, the U.S. relationship with Russia. Over to you, Paul.
Most definitely. I mean, Gene, we've got to understand as well, Trump is fighting a multi-layered war. Right now, we're in the defensive part, which is now coming to an end, which is Trump cleaning house, which is him taking away all the outside influences, cutting off the funding to the deep state cabal at the knees. USAID was the biggest one. I mean, it's got to be embarrassing. You funded your own propaganda machine that turned against your own people. Don't get me wrong, the UK is in exactly the same position, but they are hitting everything all at once. Gene, he's playing a massive art of war thing because, you know, when your enemy's on the back foot, you don't stand back and let him regain. You keep hitting him. And that's what he's doing. As you said, RFK is coming after all the health industry. You know, Bondi in AG, Epstein being released. Kash Patel is going to absolutely rip through the FBI, the FBI, sorry. Elon Musk is going through all the money. You know, the other day in the interview, they said potentially they've got 1 million government employees drawing a wage that don't exist. That's a lot of money. And who knows, that money might even be going to fund deep state operatives operating inside government. Who knows? But I can tell you right now, they are playing out a plan. And I believe once they get their house in order, the rest of the world is going to be changed fundamentally for a very long time to come, and for the better as well, because he's exposing the corruption. He's exposing the corruption in the UK as well. Elon's doing quite a lot of trolling in the UK, but, you know, then the UK falls into line. Then they start moving through Europe. Russia, by the sounds of it, it's got its house in order already. China, I don't know about. But you can see big changes are coming to the world. Because I can tell you right now, there's enough resources, there's enough money, there's enough wealth for every person on this planet to be happy if they choose to be happy. It's coming. It's on its way. I don't know about everybody else, but I'm feeling the pinch of not having enough wealth to keep a roof over my head. But you can see it's all coming, and it's not long. I don't think it's going to be that long. A couple of years, and we're going to see big changes in the UK.
Yeah, and the change is, and as they're going to explain here, a change from a military-industrial based economy. And Eisenhower warned about the military-industrial complex, where they have a war every single generation. So how do you not erode your internal? And this is what peace is looking. The whole point of peace is to get your internal industry going. So on we go with the expose.
I know that some people that come more from the left perspective have difficulty trusting someone that comes from the right, so that they pre-screen this. But you follow people like Aaron Mate, people like Michael Tracy, people like Glenn Greenwald. These are people from the left that have followed foreign policy for a long time, and and over time you've seen them come around that Trump is a more nuanced figure than what a pre-ideological filter would impose on. It goes all the way back to his uncle, Fred Trump, who was the guy who they trusted to look at Tesla's records after Tesla died. Brilliant scientist who constantly warned Trump about the risk of, when he was just a kid growing up, of nuclear conflict, the nuclear war. Trump will talk about it from now on, that it truly preoccupies him. And that's why they're like, a lot of people, my friends on the left, were shocked when Trump came out and said, I'm willing to cut the defense budget by half if China and Russia will go with me. Trump sees spending on not all spending. He sees some spending on the defense industry as domestic manufacturing, domestic industry. That's a fact that the left and others haven't always come to terms with. That if you want to take apart the defense industry and say we need a lot less defense spending, remember some portion of that employs high-end labor and high-end work. Trump is more cognizant of that, I think, than some people on the left are. But there's a lot of it he sees as net negative efficiency. That productivity, the investment rate of return you get on defense industry spending, it's not as good as a lot of other domestic industry he would prefer to invest in. So that part didn't surprise, but Trump's going to be very job concerned. He's always going to communicate strength because he comes from that position. He also thinks that's the way you achieve peace. as you come across a little bit crazy.
So, as I was explaining, Trump is very aware as a businessman how to do this and how to keep it going. So, we'll continue with the expose because it will explain quite a bit here.
So far, it's been a blitzkrieg, to use old German phraseology, through the deep state in ways they clearly didn't anticipate because they weren't anticipating defending on all these fronts. So they filed, 50 lawsuits begging courts to get involved. And going back to the origin of your question, Alex, I think the Supreme Court of the United States is going to come in and say and adopt the unitary executive theory, going to prohibit courts in the future from issuing injunctions beyond the scope of the parties before them, called nationwide injunctions in these cases. That would
this part is very important to listen to where we're headed.
Substantially reduce the ability of one judge to just completely derail the federal government, as is happening currently. And I think they're going to empower the elected head of the executive branch to do what he wants in terms of personnel and funds. That he has certain executive discretion, and it's not the duty or privilege or prerogative of any court to impair that. So I think that's where we're heading. We'll probably get that Supreme Court decision within 6 months because so many judges are issuing so many crazy decisions that crazy decisions as seen from large parts of the public, that the Supreme Court will have no choice but to act sooner rather than later. I agree.
So this is, where we're headed, something that will give the president, Trump, more ability to do things that need to be done for the people of the country. And as the main elected official, as was previously explained, I know you're running out of time, Paul, so I'll continue the expose after you leave. And I'll just let you make your comments at this point, and then we will continue on with a little bit longer of a deep dive. Tea and scones, I'll go into the nightcap part on my own. So over to you, Paul.
This is something that has been talked about for a long time. How the justice system, depending on which president is in and which judges they appoint, is weaponized. Now, this is never the intention of the justice system, but somehow it's become an extended arm of whoever's in power. Now, we can see Trump is going to dismantle this and rebuild it the right way. One Supreme Court judge should not have the whole say over anything that goes on. This is a worrying precedent that we've seen come over the last 10, 20 years because they used it against Trump. It was amazing to see how the justice system was weaponized so heavily. And it just shows you that when they've only got one target, how quickly they move on that target. But Trump has now fired off bullets in all sorts of directions, as the gentleman said, blitzkrieg. They can't bring the justice system to bear on all these different things that are happening at once. They don't have that much influence anymore. Their influence is diminishing, and Trump is going to rejiggle the justice system so that it will never be used in this way again. And it's going to be fantastic.
Yes, thank you so much, Paul. It's going to be quite stunning for the world. And this next part that I'll cover after you're gone here, I know you're running out of time, will be going into the alliance and explaining it. And Alexander puts out how in the world did they keep what he was going to attack across this blitzkrieg of fronts all at the same time? How did it keep quiet in a democracy where everything is leaked and all of that? So we'll send the recording to you, Paul, and you can upload it in 2 pieces if you want, or as a whole. I probably am going to go for about another 45 minutes or so, and I know you probably don't have that kind of time.
I actually have another show to record, so I'm very sorry, everybody. But Gene, thank you for having me once again. Everybody, we are in exciting times. Now is the time to be joyful and to see the good that is being done in this world. Yes, there is still bad going on, but wow. Gene and Mabel and everyone else on the team, thanks again for having me. I'll see you all again in 2 weeks. Take care, everybody.
Yeah, we'll see you on the flip side in 2 weeks, Paul. Thank you for joining us. And without any further delay, have a good rest of your day and your next podcast and all of that. And I will now continue with the expose on the Duran. So on we go. And this will explain the alliance.
Who exactly has played central role in all of this? I mean, clearly Elon Musk is an important figure at Doge, but I don't think he can be the only one. So who are the people? What is the team behind Trump, which is pushing through all of this? And how have they been able to act so secretly? How were they able to prepare things in a country like the United States, where leaks happen all the time, where the intelligence agencies keep everybody, especially Trump and his people, presumably, who are particularly researched and investigated and surveyed and all of those things? How are they able to do this? I mean, it is quite amazing, because this is clearly not made up on the fly.
So that's the point. How did they keep this secret? And we all know what the board said, and how many people actually knew what was going on and what was coming. And obviously, you don't come into office. You've already done peace in the Middle East, or at least a ceasefire, and you don't come into office and have 200 executive orders that have been researched legal tight. So probably people like Greg Barnes here that know what they're doing and get things legal and tight. So let me go ahead and bring this up to where we need to be now for the next part of this expose. I had it, but then it won't go to when I open it up. So I'll have to drag it and put it there. So hold on, just a little bit of patience. We'll be doing this way for a little bit.
Like, people are wondering why is my friends on the left are shocked at Trump exposing deep state money, deep state projects, deep state methods in terms of U.S. aid, especially. The deep state made two things happen. The bureaucracy became overwhelmingly liberal, overwhelmingly to the left. And consequently, that limited the ability, that antagonized people on the right. They lost allies on the right as the bureaucracy became like DC, a 90% plus Democratic town, and was willing to weaponize their power against their ideological adversaries.
And boy, have we seen the weaponization that they did against Trump. It was absolutely off the chart, as they just went on and on with this weaponization and attacking him and all kinds of, as Paul said, weaponization of the legal system against the opposing parties. So that, Alexander Makarras quite aptly, how did they keep this all secret? And how does it function that he could do this? So we'll listen to what the great Greg Barnes has to say here.
Now, but the bureaucracy had become profoundly.
After we hear from Alexander first.
The whole US aid money was sloshing around. It seems to have been more than anything else a gigantic slush fund to operate and carry out regime change in all sorts of places.
And it's like Paul was saying, they have these huge slush funds, and that's all US aid was.
And a slush fund within the United States as well, which is extraordinary. And one gets the sense it was just one of many. And you see all of these individuals.
And we are going to see what other, he mentioned the NED, the National Endowment for Democracy, another NGO kind of slush fund thing, but part of the engine of color revolutions. The U.S. deep state has done 100 color revolutions. That's almost 2/3 of the country is on Earth. So on we go.
Who have been exposed as deeply corrupt, or at least as taking money in all kinds of ways and benefiting from this. Samantha Power, Bernie Sanders, and that's been a bit of a shock to me, I have to say. All of these people, suddenly, it turns out that they've become multimillionaires. Samantha Power's $30 million. That is quite incredible, actually. So, when this happened.
So think of that. Going in and coming out worth that amount of millions and millions of dollars. It is just such, and like Paul was saying, it's hard to make ends meet. And the people are impoverished. And in the meantime, these people are getting fat off of our backs. So let's continue on and listen to more of this, because it goes into the institutionalization of the corruption.
Aid or democracy, as Ron Paul once said, it's about poor people in rich countries giving money to rich people in poor countries, when it's not about overthrowing their government. And it's you also see what this Soros influence, that all the open society kind of structures that Soros used. I mean, someone was telling me the other day, the American intervention creating the Ukrainian problem dates to 2014, like actually it kind of dates to World War II, where Operation Gladio, we left people behind, we went into bed with Nazis in order to undermine the supposed communists. We were supporting the Banderites before anybody else was in the 1950s, along the Western.
Think about that. We've been supporting the Banderites, the fascists in Ukraine, since the 1950s.
Of course, the Russians paid him back a little more directly. That whole history, but then also it's George Soros. 1990, Ukraine was his first big pet project to a degree, and so there's a reason why he's so opposed in Romania now, with the Romanian likely president to be pointing the issues with Soros out. But that model, that open society model, which also corrupted everybody around by parasitically involving them in the money and the economy of it.
And a lot of the money for the open society of George Soros came through from USAID, USAID.
Like Bill Gates did with public health, right, through the World Health Organization, create all these NGOs. If you research who is doing the fact checking for public health organizations, you find out they're funded by Bill Gates' foundation. This kind of incestuous corruption, where you had this public-private partnership activities. This happens all the way down to the local government, of how they manipulate zoning to help real estate and things like that. You don't have to watch a John Sayles movie to figure that out. But the core is they institutionalize corruption. That if you look at George Soros.
So I'll also go into another item showing how it all goes down to the state level, but Mr. Barnes is explaining that how this goes all the way down to zoning and all of this, down to the municipalities.
Organization, Bill Gates' organization. And the third I would recommend is the Clinton Foundation. You'll get the roadmap for what USA did. It was just, they were so brazen about it. It was like, it's one thing to
So he's saying how open society, Bill Gates Foundation and the Clinton Foundation are so brazen, and they work together to overthrow and get a one world order.
Kill the public's money to create another stupid war that's going to hurt us and make us less secure rather than more secure around the world. It's quite another to say, oh, my friend George needs some money. Hey, George, well, what do you need some money for? Or what's going to be our excuse? Say I'm helping trainees in Peru. I mean, it's stuff like 95% of that money, it never even went to the ultimate destination.
So this is what I've been saying. This money for USAID for an opera or something of a transsexual nature in some South American country, that's not what it's paying for. It's going to their nepotism of who needs something and a payout and a quid pro quo kind of benefit thing that they do around the world.
Then people still think USAID helped poor people around the world. It's like USAID was designed to screw poor people around the world. So it was always that way. And that's why a lot of foreign leaders knew it. But the Trump's willingness just to expose, I mean, like you go back to the only other time something like this was, well, there's twice. Once, if you go back to the post-World War I era where Congress held war racketeering committees, those are some of my favorite committees. And if you want proof of what I'm talking about in terms of this populist anti-war Republican tradition, look at Senator Nye, who ran that committee from North Dakota. I mean, he blamed all wars on banksters and corrupt military profiteers. Thus, war profiteering and racketeering and all that. The second time they really faced challenge was the Church Committee, House Assassinations Committee, part of what happened after Nixon's resignation in Watergate. But those are the only two times they faced meaningful public exposure. Trump has managed to expose them without having to go through all the committee hearings in a record time.
So that's the point, is Trump is using a different technique so it doesn't take all of this bureaucracy and time. He doesn't have the time. We don't have the time. We were so close to them getting the golden ring and putting us in FEMA camps and all this that Trump can't play the waiting game anymore. So he using this a different technique that has not been used in this way before.
Going to where their money is and showing how insane it is. That not only is it disruptive and destructive around the world, not been congressionally authorized in a clear way, not been transparent, but kept hidden in secret by accounting tricks. And
see, and this is the brilliance of Doge, is you go to where the money is, which is in every way of research. You always follow the money trail to find out the truth of who's in the payout and who's corrupt and dirty. And so this is the brilliance of Trump.
Bureaucratic exclusion of elected presidents. But on top of that, they were just so brazen about what they were willing to fund and support. And that's why the court of public opinion here is not behind, oh, we must rally to US aid, we must rally to the bureaucracy, we must rally to the deep state, we must rally for more war. There's no appetite for it. Like, I'm detecting a little bit in Britain, a disconnect about where things are domestically in the US. That it's almost like they've been deceived by the deep state's ability to corrupt our administrations over decades.
So because of the showing of how our taxpayer money has been wasted across the world, that now he's going to go in and explain how this has made the American public back Trump so powerfully. Even people before that weren't backing him are backing him now because of the brazenness of the deep state, and then the showing of where the money was going at the same time is making the American people very upset where they will not back this deep state mechanism anymore.
And that's publicly popular. It's really never been popular, but it's never been more unpopular than it is right now in America. America wants no more of these dumb wars. They want no more of foreign aid. They want no more of being entangled in a foreign world. Most of them support Trump's tariff strategy. Most of them support Trump's withdrawal from the Ukraine conflict. Most of them support no more foreign aid as much as possible. Most of them support the U.S. aid cutoff. Most of them support NED cutoff. So that, that they're tired of their money being wasted. They're tired of caring more about foreigners than Americans as they perceive it.
So the American people are just tired of it, and they're so behind Trump now because of all this just brazen behavior by the deep state. They thought because they control the mainstream media, but because of the internet and the social networking, now they don't have that control. The Mockingbird media is no longer in control. We are the news now, has been said so often.
Tired of the empire politics. The EU is not particularly popular. And I think, as you guys put it recently, you have these sort of ghosts of empires in Europe coasting on American political power because they've been able to co-opt America's sort of deep state infrastructure to continue to propagandize their Napoleonic ambitions. When in reality, they are functionally dead. I mean, the European Union, what it can and can't do economically. But otherwise, I mean, is anybody scared of the French? Anybody scared? I mean, like the Brits are like, we'll send troops to Ukraine. No, who cares? Starmer can come over here and he can beg and get on his knees and everything. It ain't changing. We're out. Ukraine war is going to end. The conflict's going to be over. Détente with Russia is going to be reached. What I don't know is how much it lasts, because I'm sure the Russian political leadership knows it cannot trust the West ever again. The question is, you look at what Trump is really doing. I think you've described it best, and were the first person to really articulate this in an intellectual framework, is that there's these spheres of influence.
So this is what Paul was talking about. This will explain it to you.
Was making clear is he doesn't consider Europe a great power. Right? U.S., China, Russia. That's kind of it. I mean, he didn't mention the European Union when we talk about defense cuts.
So there you go. And I'll play one more item, but there's the spheres of influence that we are talking about before. And so the last little item to close this off here.
Yeah, he doesn't care about Europe.
even than Trump's conversation with Putin. It's the shock of the speeches by Pete Hegseth and J.D. Vance. And it's really quite incredible because especially the J.D. Vance speech, for me, is really remarkable because the Europeans were horrified about it. And they were horrified with the line that he was taking, that, Europe is falling away from democratic values. It's not the free part of the free world anymore. It's not integrated. It doesn't share the same values as the United States does. But as we've discussed, Nixon, when it comes to the details of the things that J.D. Vance said, I have not seen a single article, commentary, speech, anywhere in Britain, anywhere in Europe, that says that J.D. Vance got any of the details wrong.
And that's the important part. That speech, if you didn't hear J.D. Vance at the Munich conference, I highly recommend you go do so. But he didn't get any of it wrong. He was just telling it is, everything how it is. So if you want to listen to the rest of this or in its entirety, it's on the Duran on YouTube here. This is Alex Christoffel and Alexander Makaris. So with Robert Barnes. So on we go with another item that I wanted to cover, that how things happen at the local level. And a wonderful person emailed me this. So I wanted to share and click through this a little bit as a short expose because it's very eye-opening.
Can't show you what's behind this closed door. Place where legislators and corporate lobbyists have an equal vote, a place they don't want you to see.
You need to be credentialed at register.
We are credentialed. We're Georgia media. Are there legislators in there? Are there legislators in there? We are Georgia credentialed media.
Here? This up over here.
What?
So our elected officials are in there, but you can't go in and listen to them. And this guy has, the press ability to do exactly that. And yet this lady's saying, no, you can't go in there.
There's Georgia legislators here. Are laws being made in there? This isn't the state capitol. It's a resort hotel in Savannah where lawmakers are wined and dined as members of the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC. What is ALEC?
It's really a corporate bill mill. I mean, they're cranking out legislation, putting in the hands of legislators.
So there you go. And listen to, I'm going to move through here to what comes up next. Being backed up by the police and the U.S. Marshals. So this is a little bit on ALEC. You can see where this is off of Facebook here. But let me go ahead to where they're actually
legislators here in Georgia, wherever they meet, to discuss laws. He's calling for backup. ALEC staffers had 4 off-duty sheriff's deputies standing by while we talked with the group's director of communications.
And this is this usage of our U.S. Marshals. These marshals should be ashamed of themselves. They're marshals for the deep state.
Why not? If you please turn the camera off. No, we can't turn the camera off. That's one thing we don't do. Okay, well then I'd like to have you escorted out of the building. Okay, I'm a guest of this hotel. I'm actually staying here. You are staying at this. Yes. So here's the question is, if Georgia legislators are meeting here, we're credentialed right here to see Georgia legislators making laws. Are they discussing things that could become law here? Georgia legislators are here participating in discussions where they're learning from legislators from others. So what?
So, I mean, it's like you can't even question, no freedom, no ability of transparency on who we voted for, what they're talking about. They're going with these lobbyists, these NGOs.
The people who elected them see the process. This is a private meeting. A private meeting paid for by whom? By our members and donors. Our lobbyists, correct? No. Are you here for this conference too?
Yeah, by our lobbyist friends. So I thought you all would like to see that. It's so important to understand. And then this is the Jeffrey Sachs, who's a professor, and he made a speech at the EU Parliament. And I wanted to play this all for you because it is absolutely stunning. It's the best parts of this speech. I highly recommend you go listen to the entire thing. This is at Glen Dyson. that you can see this on X.
And we will do as we want. The wars in the Middle East, Serbia, the wars in Africa, these are wars that the United States led and caused. And this has been true for more than 40 years. Europe has not had any foreign policy during this period that I can figure out. No voice, no unity, no clarity, only American loyalty. Please don't have American officials as head of Europe. Have European officials. Have a European foreign policy. You're going to be living with Russia for a long time, so please negotiate with Russia. Trump and President Putin will agree to end the war. If Europe does all its great warmongering, it doesn't matter. The war is ending. Not one word is told to the American people about anything, or to you, or by any of your newspapers these days. This idea that Putin's reconstructing the Russian Empire, this is childish propaganda. So the war started. What was Putin's intention in the war? I can tell you what his intention was. When Zelensky said in 7 days, let's negotiate, I know the details of this exquisitely. I flew to Ankara to listen in detail to what the mediators were doing. Ukraine walked away unilaterally from a near agreement. Why? Because the United States told them to. I begged the Ukrainians, and I had a track record with the Ukrainians. I advised the Ukrainians. I'm not anti-Ukrainian, I'm pro-Ukrainian completely. I said, save your lives, save your sovereignty, save your territory, be neutral. Don't listen to the Americans. I repeated to them the famous adage of Henry Kissinger, that to be an enemy of the United States is dangerous, but to be a friend is faithful.
So this is where we are now. The Ukraine war is essentially done. And so now we have the truth finally coming out with Trump in. And I wanted to share this last little item right here. Congratulations for all of you. This is posted on X, reposted from Kash Patel on David Wolf. If you're unjabbed, you resisted global propaganda with over 100, worth over $100 billion. The fact that you withstood such intense pressure shows how strong you are, making you a rare breed in a time when that kind of backbone is nearly extinct. So congratulations, everyone that made it through this time. I wanted to share that with you all finally, to explain to you that you are brave, that you are an amazing individual, and that this way of the Western hegemony of the world is at an end. And we have spheres of influence. We have the BRICS nations and all of that. So that's my expose for tonight, and tea and scones and the nightcap portion at the end. Thank you, everyone, for being here on Deep Dives and with us, and for all your support over the years. Everyone that is part of that, thank you for all you've done. Thank you for sending all of the materials that I cover all the time. Thank you to BFS, Mabel for this live stream, Sophie for the recording, Ellis for the invocation, and all of this. And thank you so much, BFS, for standing by through all this hardship and hard times that we've been through. And then lastly, if she will, I would like and ask Marie to please close us in prayer.
Oh, sure.
Surprise!
That was a surprise. I'm glad I'm still awake. You're so funny. Father God, we thank you so much for everything that you do, for giving us this beautiful platform, for giving Jean the strength and courage to carry on for all these many years that he's been teaching us and waking us up and sharing your words and your information with us. And we thank you for Paul being here with us tonight, and for all the wonderful information and his breakdown. that he was able to provide. And Father God, we ask that you continue to give each and every one of us courage and strength and peace in our hearts, peace in our minds, to continue to do what we need to do, and to continue to listen, and to listen to you more and more carefully, more open-mindedly, and with more clarity. So we ask for you to bless each and every one of us now, those who are listening, and to help us carry you in our hearts more strongly each and every day. We thank you, Father God, for all of the wonderful gifts and blessings, and for the healing for those who are needing it right now. There are quite a few people going through what might be ascension symptoms, what might be just kind of the worldly things that we're going through right now that impact us and sometimes take us a little bit downhill in our in our health. And so ask you for continued blessings of healing for those who need that. And as always, thank you most especially for the gift of your precious, beloved, and only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, to Taylor's Day.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Marie. Thank you, everyone. Be more like compassion, more like kindness, no, more like respect, more like dignity, and leave the judgment for God, more like our Redeemer, the only begotten Son of our one Creator of all creation, Jesus Christ. So good night, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on your dimension, density, and level and location. God bless. And for me, good night, and we'll see you when we see you. Thank you very much. Hasta luego.